Okay, and let's see. And can you guys hear me? Okay, and I believe we are live then. All right. All right, everyone. So this has been quite the month, both for the industry and definitely for my channel. I'm curious to see how many people are watching by the end of this. It seems to quadruple every month now. And yeah, my shirt finally got here. It didn't actually ship with Radeon 7. They then made you use a coupon to have them ship you a new one, but it's actually a little higher quality than I thought. It's not the nicest shirt, but it's actually pretty soft, so I'm happy with it. I think the back could maybe be a little more understated. It's a little obnoxious for my minimalist taste, but yeah. And yes, it's long sleeve. There's no decisions. It's like what size, and then they just send it, and it gets there in like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. But anyways, let's get going here. There's because of how much bigger my channel's gotten, I prefer the dog shirt too. This is going to we're gonna have to see if we can move with this one because man, yeah. First off the bat, I'll go over the format of these. I answer Patreon questions that were submitted beforehand, and the benefit of being one of my premium Patreon members is that you can submit questions ahead of time, and I don't just make sure I answer those right. I also do at least a little research for you. Like if it's a small subject, I'll spend at least some time thinking about it. It's not just me, off the top of my head responding. So we do that first, respond to Patreon questions. Then I move on to loose ends, like things I noticed from this month I didn't mention in videos. And then I move on to a couple of big themes for the month that don't deserve a video, but are kind of the main themes of this video. And after that, there's like 15 minutes of Q&A. And I am going to keep it to 15 minutes this time because I need to keep this under an hour and a half. I'm hoping to keep it for 1 hour. And so please save your questions for the very end. I'm assuming there's going to be a lot of people watching compared to last time. So if you put like a 50-cent tip, or I don't know, if you're a foreign currency, it really doesn't matter. I'll notice it if it's highlighted. But otherwise, Patreon members always get answered. And at the end, it's a little bit of a free for all. So no guarantees, but that will be there for everyone. Okay, so let's get started with Patreon questions. First of all, Thomas Rupp asks, how can smaller players grow in this space dominated by giants? I think this is a pretty good question, but Cortex kind of almost touched on it a little because apparently VIA survived this whole time, right? Even during the monopolistic years of Intel. And they did so by using outdated nodes. They didn't have the money nor the R&D to use the newer nodes, but they could stay on 40 nanometer and sell you like 2 gigahertz quad cores for ultra low power and cheap servers. If you needed a times 86 server that wasn't peak performance but needed to be efficient, they were actually fairly competitive with Intel for like half the price. So there's always going to be niche these smaller players can play into. And I think there will always be room for startups. And this is something I want to touch on that I thought about that I might do a video on eventually. It's do not underestimate people starting new businesses in any field, even no matter how dominant the players are, right? Like, for instance, Tesla was founded by a billionaire, not a startup exactly, right? But still, no one ever said you could take on the big automotive companies, and he is. And if for some reason AMD and NVIDIA became a duopoly, which they arguably almost are, but let's say it got crazy, right? If they went mad with power, there will always be someone who steps in to make money where they're being stupid. I think, at least. Always. Let me give you an example. I mean, NVIDIA is almost mad with power as it is, But let's say they went the full 10 yards and the equivalent in 5 years of a GTX 1650 was like 299 instead of one. I don't know. It's almost 200 now. So again, they're almost mad with power. I can guarantee you someone else would enter into the space with something. It wouldn't be as good, but it would be something people would buy if people overcharged. Like if VIA entered GPUs and they made it, let's say hypothetically, and this was going against the GTX 1650 at $300, they could make something on like 28 nanometer. It would use 150 watts, so double the energy, and maybe it would be 5% weaker. But if they charged $100 for it because they're using it on an outdated node and they don't want they don't expect high margins, it would do well. People would buy that. And there will always be people that do startups. And in the future, I could see if where we all get stuck on 3 nanometer and you have this price fixing going on, someone will make something to challenge people. So I say there's always space for innovation and people to step in. It's just sometimes hard, but there's always brilliant people. Bootman asks, will Intel have a decent response, or is this 2000? I think this is worse than 2003 and potentially worse than Bulldozer. That's my opinion. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know if it's going to get that bad. But I mean, when I look at these roadmaps compared to each other, it looks disastrous to me. I mean, again, let me just outline this. Objectively speaking, right? The 3900X is $500. Same price currently. I'm sure they'll drop the price, but same price currently as the 9900K. It's going to at least, I would say, be 10% stronger in single core performance, maybe more after these security patches. And it will also have 50% more cores and probably use 33% less energy. And then imagine, so where does Intel drop the price of the 9900K to? 400? No, 3800X is also going to be stronger. Okay. 3700X. So they're going to drop the price in half. Well, that's a 65 watt CPU that's outperforming Intel's $500 one. Even if they dropped it to 250, AMD's solution uses almost half the energy. This is a bloodbath. This is worse than Bulldozer, in my opinion, at least based on the information we have. We'll have to wait and see. And the thing that I see even worse is their solution is dropping an 8 core at 5 gigahertz that's rumored to use over 200 watts. So what's that going to be priced at? It uses double the energy of the 3700X it would compete with. It can't be the same price. I don't know where they price these things. And the rumor is they're going to go to 10 cores next year as well. And then 10 cores the additional year. Next year, AMD, if they want to, I'm starting to wonder if they'll start milking. If they want to, AMD could even just drop a 5 gigahertz 16 core, which I suspect they're only going to put on Threadripper now. Or they could go to Zen 3 and they're rumored to be increasing core counts, at least increasing thread counts. And we know it will be more efficient, maybe on 6 nanometer EUV. So Intel has what, 2 more cores next year? No IPC increases against AMD, possibly doubling multi-threading performance again and increasing efficiency. And then who knows what Zen 4 is? And they have nothing but 10 cores for the next 3 years. Yeah, I think this is an absolute bloodbath that could be worse than Bulldozer. That's my opinion. We're just going to have to see. But I mean, really, Intel, at least on desktop and server, I think Intel is hosed. Pack up your bags. We'll see in 4 years. Hopefully you don't lose literally all your market share. And I know how crazy I sound. I know I'm wearing an AMD shirt, but I just don't see this world where Intel doesn't lose much more than people are expecting. Most people, that is. Michael Hayes asks, I really enjoy your channel. I'm fascinated with technology. Oh, he's asking about memory timings. Yeah, I would do a separate video on that if I did one. I can also link to some. There are some there. It's pretty simple, really, with memory timings. There's just like 4 numbers, right? 3 of them are lower ones, and there's one usually above 30. And these are the CAS timings. And you go all the way to the front. You have to do the first number first. It can never be a higher number than the second 2. And that's about it. And the interesting thing with overclocking RAM, this is a tip if no one's done it. I mean, extra voltage doesn't seem to help frequency that much on most RAM kits. It's like if your RAM's stable at stock voltage at 3000 megahertz, going to from 1.25 volts, for instance, to 1.5 volts, which is what I run my RAM at, it only adds like 300 megahertz or something at most, you know? So but voltage helps with timings, tightening up timings. I've noticed that. So that's a tidbit. Find your frequency. Go to whatever. I mean, it's literally just go to whatever voltage you're comfortable with your RAM being at, which I would say with DDR. It's the latest DDR4 kits. I wouldn't go above 1.45. The first DDR4 kits, like mine is, which is years old, actually was kind of just DDR3. They've been for DDR4. So it can take higher voltages. But yeah, I'd say don't go above 1.4 volts, maybe 1.45. I'd stop at 1.45 volts, see what frequency is stable, make sure the frequency is 100% stable. And then there's a few other voltages on the motherboard you can overclock and set the timings tighter. It's that simple. And you are going to want to do it after overclocking core frequency, probably, because they are, you might get a higher core overclock and a lower RAM overclock or vice versa. So keep that in mind. I got a lot of questions from one person who wants to remain anonymous. He asked, what are my opinions on self-driving? I think it's here. I think it's coming, but I don't think it's going to come as fast. I don't think it's going to come as completely and as fast as people think it will. It's funny too, because I thought it would be here instantly. If you asked me 4 years ago, what do you think about self-driving? I'd say, yeah, we'll probably have tons of self-driving cars by 2020. But if you ask me now, I say 2030 at the soonest. And it's just the simple fact that you're not going to, when you look outside, all your neighbors, how many of them are self-driving? You really think all of them are going to buy new cars in 2 years? I don't think so. So, and there's a lot of bugs to work out, but it's coming. And I think it will definitely take over things like Uber and stuff. And he also asked, what do you think about 4K? Are we moving past that quickly? Yeah, Samsung's selling 8K TVs now. Sony's selling 8K TVs now. I think 8K is going to be here sooner than people expect, but I think the content's going to take way longer than people expect. Way longer. But frankly, with these new what is it? I forgot the name. It's like nano dot LED and stuff. Like eventually it won't be as hard, especially with larger TVs and monitors, to make 8K. They're almost to it, the ability now, right? So I don't think 8K is that far away, and it might eventually not be that expensive either. It's just, I don't know where the contents is. I'm sure Netflix will add it before everyone else, but I don't know. Micro LED. Thank you. Let's see. Do I think Nvidia is dead in 5 years? No. I think they have serious headwinds they need to go against. I don't think they'll be dead. Will the limitations of silicon slow us? I don't think we're going to slow down too much in the next 2 years. I think we're going to slow down a lot in the next 5 years. And I think there is going to be a wall we hit in about 6 years, though. Right? That's what I think, is that it's just going to be like 28 nanometer, where it's like, whoa, what was that? And we'll just slow down. Okay, let's see. I don't know what that question is there. But I will close on this. There's this great writer named Andrew Pargin, and he was asked about a problem, and he said, wait, there's a problem we have. If only there was an animal that was good at working together and solving problems. And that's humans. We will always overcome stuff. We will always get new performance that we want. Humans will get whatever they want if we work together. That's what it comes down to. So silicon will slow us down at first, but I'm sure we'll find a way to increase performance. And we just always will, right? People who say we will, but there will be a slowdown that might last for 4 or 5 years. That could suck a little bit. But the good news is I think we're going to get a lot stronger in 2021. And then we're going to get like twice as strong as that. So I think we're going to get like 4 times more performance than what we have now over the next 10 years. It should be about enough for photorealistic graphics and a lot of other stuff anyway. So I think we'll be okay during the drought, but there will be some milking going on then. All right, another question here. We have Jim Brett, who asks, what is AMD likely to invest in outside of GPU and CPU? Well, I think the most obvious things they need to invest in right now are anything that integrates components together. And I know that sounds like an obvious answer, but think about it, right? They make consoles, they're doing servers. They want to be the person that sells the weapons, not fights the wars. They want to sell weapons to Sony, Microsoft, even Intel if they need to, right? They sold Intel graphics cards for their almost APU Kaby Lake G systems. AMD wants to sell weapons to everyone, and they want to integrate their different things together the best, better than anyone. So they will be looking into new types of fabrics, new communications protocols, like ways you can stack dies. That's all what they're working on now. And you can already start to see some of that stuff. In fact, I'll do a video on it, but I'm very curious. I'm starting to suspect that PlayStation 5 and maybe the next Xbox use a type of fabric instead of PCIe or off-the-shelf parts to make the components communicate, so they can do super fast loading. Again, I might see some of your comments there, but they will come at the end, right? All right. And then, but I think the next logical thing is actually ASICs. And I think that for everyone. I'm going to do a video on NVIDIA and ASICs soon that I'm pretty excited about. I do need to do more NVIDIA videos, right? It's been like all anti-Intel recently, which I'm getting tired of already. But I think ASICs, no, I mean ASICs, not FPGAs. I know the difference, buddy. I think ASICs and FPGAs, but ASICs are the holy grail. There's no reason you can't make tons of different ASICs for each little thing. And I think that's going to be one of the futures of performance when silicon slows down, at least temporarily. Like, well, everyone does this every day. Everyone does this every day. Everyone does this every day. And you have small, like, 1 watt ASICs all over a CPU that does those different things. That's something AMD needs to get if they want to stay ahead of Intel 10 years from now, I think. So that's probably the actual answer you're looking for. Will Navi be good at compute? I think Navi will be every bit as good as compute as Vega at the same SP count and bandwidth, but most of them won't have the same SP count and bandwidth. I think it will be possibly less efficient than Vega and more expensive for compute, depending on the compute task per die size. And that's something you got to understand. My Radeon 7 has a die size of 331 millimeters. That's positively small. That's a mid-range graphics card size that they just have really early yields on because they got to 7 nanometer first. This really isn't, it's kind of like, I don't know how else to put it, right? It would be like if NVIDIA's GTX 1080 Ti was on like 10 nanometer instead of 16, and it was only like 30% better because of it, and it was actually a card smaller than the 1080, but because they had bad yields, it was charged like it was a high-end card. That's what you need to think of with the Radeon 7. But yields are probably pretty good by now, honestly, on 7 nanometer. I bet they're at 75-80%. So there's no reason Navi should be more efficient at compute, considering how small that die size is. I think Navi's going to go up to 400 millimeters squared with with the same amount of stream processors. So they're using more of that die space for gaming, and that's ROPs and all these other tweaks. So I think Navi will be better at compute than Pascal, and per die space better than Turing, but Turing's a giant die size. So I mean, the answer is it won't be horrible, but it's meant for gaming now, right? It's meant for gaming. And I think Vega is going to stay there as the smaller chips, relatively speaking, that, again, right, my Radeon 7 is only a little bigger than what probably Navi 10 is going to be in die size, like 10% bigger die. And yet it's going to have a probably 10%, 20% better compute performance. But Navi 10 might be almost as strong as the Radeon 7 in gaming. That's the difference. And another question from the same person, Jim Brett. How complacent is Microsoft? Not as bad as he said, on a scale of 0 to Intel, which I like how he puts that. Not as bad as Microsoft at all. I mean, not as bad as Intel at all. But Microsoft is a weird company. I mean, are they really a company you would think of when you say innovative? I certainly wouldn't. Microsoft's never been an innovative company, if you ask me, at least relatively speaking to their peers, like ever. But at the same time, I think they're getting more innovative. I think their current CEO is pretty good. So that's nice. Just never expect them to be as innovative as someone like, I'm going to say it, like Google, Apple, Sony, or Tesla. And I know everyone here probably hates one of those 4 people I mentioned, but I don't know. Don't hate a company, guys. They're innovative sometimes. Microsoft didn't invent personal music players. Microsoft didn't invent the smartphone. And in fact, they ignored smartphones to their own peril. Now, their convertibles is, a good sign. They did some cool things. I actually thought Kinect at first was pretty innovative, and it's turning out to still be pretty good for scientific stuff. But I don't see them as a super innovative company. But They're not. I don't really think they're that complacent anymore. And the fact is, Microsoft can do great things when they have to. They just have to. That's the problem. Someone always has to seem to force them off a cliff before they do anything intelligent. I don't get why that is. Probably just because they're a giant company. But I wish they were a bit more efficient at it. Because, man, if they streamline their company, I bet Microsoft could do incredible things. And here's one last question. This actually isn't from a Patreon member, but I saw several people ask it, so I'm definitely going to answer it here because I want to. How accurate was Adored TV on the Ryzen leak? He was dead on. He wasn't wrong. He was dead on, guys. AMD has 16 cores. I've seen the benchmarks myself. They don't have them all public. Guys, the 16 core, 5 gigahertz exists. Why do you think they keep leaking those benchmarks too? Every day you go to WCCF, you see a 16 core Ryzen benchmark leak. They're taunting Intel. They're saying, do it, Intel, release something. We want to crush you. No, he wasn't wrong about clock speeds. They're not even launching the top 12 core. They're launching the second tier 12 core at the same price they were going to launch the top 16 core. And yet they're probably going to crush Intel more than I thought they would. That's how bad things are. That's how much they can crush them if they want to. Having said that, I think they're probably going to save 16 cores only for Threadripper now, because I thought about it. There's now rumors they may do a Zen 2 Threadripper. And I think a Zen 2 Threadripper would actually, what they would do is just do the best quad core yields, right? Take the defective ones and take the most efficient defective chips, because they're not giving you 8 cores yet. They need to meet EPYC demand. But they could do 4 times 4, right? 4 quad core chiplets and do 16 cores. And instead of starting Threadripper at 8 or 12 cores, now they'll start it at 16 cores, which actually makes a lot of sense, I think. And then that'll be maybe the $800 entry Threadripper, the $1,000 Threadripper. Well, it was rumored to be the 24 core, but I bet they charge more now that they're crushing Intel. There's no way they're giving you $24 to $1,000 anymore. At least I doubt it. I would be very happy, though, if they did like $900 for the 16, or 700 even, maybe 800, probably 800 or 700 for the 16 core. But it'd probably be at 5 gigahertz because, again, it's 4 times 4. So they're using the most efficient quad cores, which surely can clock higher. And then they'll do 6 times 4, a 24 core, probably at 1200, which would destroy Intel. And then I think they'll do a 32. Well, no, I think they'll do 1500 for the 24 core. And I think they'll do like 2000 for the 32 core. And then I think they'll eventually launch a 48 core. But I don't think they're going to launch a 64 core right away. They certainly could, though. And I think they should. Well, actually, I don't think they should. I think a 48 core would bury Intel. There's no point. But I do think they should launch a 48 core just to really turn the knife on Intel. Okay. And that's the last time I'm giving everyone multiple questions for the month, unless you're at like a NetBurst or producer level Patreon supporter. I got more questions this month than any previous month, no surprise, and I imagine I'm going to get twice as many questions next month. So because of that, I'm going to start limiting people to like 1, maybe 2 questions per month, and you'll now use the new Discord. Well, we'll see. I'll get to that later. Discord and the channel changing. But so keep that in mind. You guys got away with murder for the last time, asking me 8 questions from the same person. All right, I'm going to take a sip here. And now things from this month. These are the loose ends that this is titled after. First loose end. A lot of people are asking about Zen 1 and Zen Plus. Should I buy a Zen 1 processor now? Should I buy a Zen Plus processor now? I think kind of yes, actually. Let me explain, though. I wouldn't buy the most expensive ones, but I've seen the R5 1600 at $90 at Micro Center. And then it gets $30 off with you buy a motherboard with it. You're not beating that with Zen 2. I think Zen 2's pricing floor is $120. So I think it depends, right? I think what you want to do probably, if you need to build now, if you need to, which I don't need to, although I want to. If you need to build now, don't be afraid to get the R5 1600, the 1700, or the 2700. I would stay away from the 2700X, but at the right price, Zen 1 and Zen Plus are actually very good right now, and I don't think they'll beat Zen 2 in price performance. Zen, but it's the right price. So what would I say the right price for these CPUs is? I would say the 1600 at $100 and I've seen it there, so I'm not crazy. If you see the 1600 at 100, bam, get that. That's the ultimate budget CPU that'll last you the next 5 years. The 1700 120, the 1700 or the 2600 like 140, which I've seen it there all the time. Maybe 130. Yeah, I know that. I know the 1600's 120 right now. That's what I'm saying, though. I wouldn't buy it for 120, but it will be 100, and I've seen it at 90. I have seen it at 90, guys. That's the price for the 1600. The 1700, like 120. The 2600, 130, and the 2700 non-X, I'd pay 150. But if you really care about high refresh rate gaming, don't underestimate Zen 2, because we know they're going to drop a what is it? The 3600X is going to be 250, and I bet it beats the 8086K. 250 beats the 8086K best gaming CPU. That's what you want, guys, if you really want the best performance. However, 250, half the price, you can get 1600 or less. I mean, if you're gaming at 60 frames a second, 1600 will last you just fine. I don't think you should be scared to get it. And keep this in mind. As long as you get a B450 or higher motherboard, you can probably keep using Zen 3. Zen 3. So you can get a 1600 for like $100 now, wait over a year, get a Zen 3, I don't know, 20 core, 60 thread. Who knows what they'll end up releasing? That's what you want to do if you're trying to save money, if you ask me. Another thing I have, so that was that. And let's see. Okay. And yeah, I know you guys want my opinions on Ice Lake, right? You do. I would preface what I'm about to say with, I have repeatedly said that if there's one segment I think Intel can hold on to, it's ultra portable laptops and ultrabooks. I really think they could. And I don't think that 18% IPC is crazy. I don't believe anything Intel says anymore, though. They keep lying. So please don't wait for Ice Lake. That's my point. Wait for, you have a confirmed Zen release date. You can bet Lisa's not lying to you. Intel, who the hell knows? And if you want, I can link to this. Everyone needs to zoom in on the IPC slide. And this is where anyone really curious about Ice Lake and what my apprehension is, listen now, stop typing. If you zoom in on the fine print on the IPC page, zoom in, it says, I'm going to pull it up because I don't want to misquote it. I literally want to quote it so you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. All right, this is the reference on the IPC increase, 18%. No, well, we'll see, Arjun. 18% IPC improvements. Note, performance results are based on testing as of dates shown in configuration and may not reflect all publicly available security patches. Do you really trust that 18%? They said before security patches. Guys, Intel's fucked. I don't know what to tell you. Don't trust what they're saying. Don't wait for Ice Lake. It's a quad core that it will be lucky to match the IPC of Zen 2 on 7 nanometer. I don't think Ice Lake's going to do anything but maybe allow them to keep some of their laptop market share. I really have to point that out, guys. Intel has done nothing but lie for the past 4 years, and they just said this doesn't have security patches. I don't know. 18. So my opinion on Ice Lake, 18% actually is plausible depending on what Ice Lake does. And the reason their desktop chips aren't getting any of these enhancements are they can't use any new architectures on 14 nanometer. They designed them for 10. It costs a lot of money to put it on a different node. That's right. Press F for respects on Intel. This is their latest attempt, though, in my opinion. 18% is plausible, but it's limited to quad cores, and it will always be limited to quad cores, if you ask me. Maybe they'll make a couple 6 cores or something for laptop, but I wouldn't put my money on it. I think it's just going to be super low power quad cores, like 10 watts. That's probably not even going to be more efficient than Zen 2 laptops, and they'll probably have the same IPC as Zen 2. So it'll allow them to keep some laptop market share. Yeah. Okay, and one more loose end here. I noticed actually 2 more. I'll do this one too. Real quick, Microsoft and Sony Cloud gaming partnership. I saw a lot of people freaking out. All I have to say about that is I want to mention it. Guys, these companies work together when they can. If they can both profit from working together, they will. Guess what? Xbox uses Sony Blu-ray players. Sony laptops used Windows. Guys, don't be surprised. They both want to not die from Stadia, so they'll work together if they have to. And all right, my final loose end here is I noticed an odd thing about my Zen 3 video. And it's been all positive after the first couple days. But in the very first, when my Whispers of Zen 3 video came out, it was the most negative people were actually AMD fanboys. And that blew me away. And it seems like there's this anger when I released that information because I think everyone was waiting to upgrade this year. And for obvious reasons, right? For their gaming builds. And so when they saw me go, by the way, guys, in a year and a half, we might get CPUs twice as good as Zen 2. Everyone was like, no way. I want to upgrade now. Guys, you can still upgrade now. You can still upgrade now. You don't need to wait for Zen 3. And I'll tell you why. If you wait for Zen 3, I don't know. Jim's been saying that Zen 4 might be just as big as Zen 3. He hasn't given any details, but AMD is not sitting still, guys. And I know you've heard me say that before, but you don't need to be mad. Like, first of all, the Zen 3 info is plausible. AMD thought they would be fighting 10 nanometer CPUs in 2018. And so they had to prepare for the worst, right? They had to prepare for 7 nanometer in Intel in 2020, but that's what Zen 3 was meant to fight. And there's always going to be a better AMD. And Zen 4 and Zen 5 will probably be big upgrades too. I don't think AMD is going to slow down until 2023. Yeah, I know my dog's pretty sick, huh? Is there anything more American than that puppy next to an American flag? Anyways, though, yeah, so that's all of my loose ends. But I've got the big theme now. And actually, I'm glad I saved Zen 3 for the big theme. The big theme, one of the big themes for this month's end of Jesus. For the end of month video is I'll answer that question since you gave me a tip, but not till the end. Again, save the tips for the end. Unless you just want to give me money, which I'll always accept. Today's big theme is actually going to be about understanding AMD's plans. And this is a big deal here, people. I think it's very clear that Jim got all the information right. I know my Zen 3 info was correct. And in fact, I'm 90% sure that Navi lineup I showed was their original, not their original plan, but their plan a few weeks ago. However, it's very clear AMD's changing their roadmaps because they can. So whatever you've heard from me, from Adored, there's got to be like one other, I'm sure Cortex has some interest. Yeah. Or Cortex, people who actually get these things right. Whatever you've heard the past couple months, they're still mostly true, but they're not rock solid anymore. What they tell you is what AMD could do, not what they will, right? What they could do. AMD seems to have this big dick energy right now. And it's because they know they're about to get away with a lot in a good way, though. And that means they don't need to necessarily go all out, or they might need to reprioritize the way they price certain things. So but like, for instance, I said Zen 3 is coming next year, and I do think it will to server potentially at the very end of the year. But I don't know anymore. There might be a Zen 2 Plus. There might be a Zen 2 Plus where it's slightly tweaked and they just bring Zen 2 to 7 nanometer EUV early, lower TDPs by 10% or something, right? So maybe they do like an 85 or 87 watt or something, 4900X that's Zen 2 based, and they clock it at 5 gigahertz. They're not necessarily going to be as aggressive anymore on the desktop. I think they will on server, though, because they got a large hill to climb there to take it from Intel. And I think they'll probably start I bet Zen 3 comes to laptop now before desktop. And I'm not sure about Threadripper. I bet I think they might release a Threadripper for Zen 2 now this year because they can, because they don't need to wait for Zen 3, because they know they can just use the worst server yields, like man, the worst server yields, and make a Zen 2 Threadripper, and then they do like a Zen 3 Threadripper like 2021 or 2021 or something. So I'm not sure anymore. There might be a Zen 2 Plus, and with Navi, I think it depended. If again, I've said this multiple times, I thought NVIDIA should release a full Turing refresh. I thought they should increase the die size to the full reticle limit. They could have made the dies 10% bigger. They could have made a 5000 SP Turing with HBM. And I mean, even if they priced the top one at 1500, I think they could have increased performance by 20% and really given Navi some sweating. But it sounds like NVIDIA is just going to do a series of TI cards, up clock speeds a little, and lower prices by $50. And if that's what they're going to do, I could see AMD changing their entire Navi strategy, charging a little more, going for the performance crown again. I don't think they'll take it, but their Navi strategy is clearly changing a little bit on that too. So I don't know, right? It's very interesting. Just keep in mind, all of these leaks, they're what AMD could do, but it's clear AMD's priorities are changing. And I think it's a good thing overall for the industry because I think they're about to get the R&D budget we need. I'm very excited. And by the way, the first benefit of that R&D budget is going to be whatever's coming after GCN. And we want that to be a doozy. Like I've said, the HD 3870 is what I compare Navi to. It didn't compete with the very top NVIDIA cards, but it brought down prices, not a ton, but a bit, and took some market share because people were desperate for an alternative to NVIDIA. And then the 4870 came out that was finally an entirely new architecture and blew NVIDIA away. That's what I see this being. Navi for this year and next year, and maybe the following year. I don't know. We'll see. But if AMD has all this R&D money, they can accelerate the next architecture. They can make it better. So the 4870 is coming, but it's not here yet. And hopefully there's a 5870 that buries NVIDIA again and they actually make money off of it instead of being stupid. Okay, so that's that theme. And the second big theme of this month is just the growth of my channel. It is exploding in size. I'm almost to 6,000 subscribers. I am, I believe, 3 times more subscribers than I was a month ago. And it's not slowing down. So I'm growing crazy fast. And the contributions from you guys, the support has been awesome, honestly. And so I know it's not a hollow 6,000. There's plenty of channels that have a few videos that are low quality, and then they have something that goes viral and they just only get a few hundred views per video. It's very interesting, this organic climb in my channel, how I don't have any 100,000 view videos, but they keep going up consistently. And so I know that people who have subscribed are really like it. And I want to keep it that way. And I want to keep growing. So there's changes coming. As you can probably tell, my audio quality is quite a bit better than it was a couple months ago. And I pretty much narrowed out all the stupid problems that kept happening to me. And that's the type of stuff you can see keep happening. I think the video quality is where I want it to be for the foreseeable future. And I don't mean like the next year. I mean just for the next few months. Remember, I'm only a few months old of a channel, really. Clickbaity titles. Here's what I promise. I won't put any women in bikinis in my thumbnails. That's what I promise. It's ridiculous how many channels do that. But yeah, and so a lot of this is going to get better, and I'm really, and a lot of you thanks for the tip. A lot of you who are on my Discord are already noticing changes there. And I'm changing the way my Patreon tiers work. I'm going to add more eventually. I'm not going to add any bigger tiers right away, though. I want to add some pretty big ones soon. But I don't want to add a new tier without giving you something better. I have thoughts about adding a producer level tier and then maybe above that an analyst tier where I literally will share information with you for 1 hour every month and like kind of be an analyst. Like give me an hour, I'll do some research and tell you what my opinion is. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be about anything. It could be about a personal issue. Like that would be that tier, and there would be a producer level tier where, well, you've seen other channels. but I don't think I have time for that yet. I have actually a pretty important job that pays really well. So I can't afford, I don't have the free time to do a producer level tier. Cause if I make a producer level tier, I know lesbian, I know that always gets a good click. If I put a, if I put a producer tier, you should feel like a producer and actually be getting even more from me, right? You should not be expecting, like, it's not just, "I need you to give me more money." You should expect something. So I'll add that eventually, but not unless this becomes my full-time job or something changes. We'll see. And what I'll say is if you wanna give me money, you can always adjust your Patreon contribution to a whatever you want. Just for now, don't expect more than the tiers I've already laid out. You can always give me more, but don't expect more, and I don't wanna put more tiers until I can give you what you deserve, frankly. And I don't have the time, yeah. How many subs for full time? I think we'll see when we get there, but I actually do have a number in my head, but I'm not gonna answer that yet. Um, it's not just subs either, it's how many people are on Patreon, right? Um, so, I mean, let's say I got 1,000 Patreon supporters. That might be enough. Um, even if my subs were the same amount as now. Anyways, though, and so expect a lot of changes to how the tiers work, and how the Discord works and how communication with me works. I can't comment on a lot of YouTube comments anymore. I do if one catches my eye and I check them from time to time, but at this point, you it's a filtering mechanism talking to my Patreon supporters, right? So that's if you want to talk to me, go on Patreon. And if you want to, and I have decided to keep all Patreon tiers able to use my Discord. I was considering not. A lot of Patreons don't. You know, they actually have a higher tier to talk to you, but I think I'm going to keep everyone there because I don't want to take anything away that I've already given you guys. However, there will be different channels in the Discord now where it's a little more serious and only like the higher tiers, you know, the unlocked tier, the net burst tier, producer tier can use those channels. And I'm thinking of launching a podcast as well, where there will be much more interaction with you guys. And I actually got some pretty cool ideas for a podcast. It's maybe not exactly what you expect. So yeah, let me know how you want me to expand the channel, but there's that, there's a website, there's a lot of things I can do if this gets big enough. Yeah, I mean, do let me know. Seriously. Like, if you want to type yes to podcast right now, I literally have no idea how many people want that, right? I have no clue. I have a feeling many of you don't know if you want it until I make it, right? How can you know? But what I'm thinking for the podcast right now is I can't do a giant, I'm going to model it a lot after the podcast Sacred Symbols, actually, which I think is an excellent podcast and how they organize it. And I will do one big podcast per month. That is very similar in its structure to Sacred Symbols. And the way it would work is, well, again, listen to Sacred Symbols, which is a good podcast if you like gaming. I know it's about PlayStation, but it's not really about PlayStation. It's about gaming. That's the structure that one would be, but I don't want to do it every week because I don't want this to get boring. I think when you make a general gaming console, well, it's not even just gaming. Chris Ragon plays PC. When it's a general gaming podcast, I think you can do that every week, especially with how gigantic his channel is. But I feel like if I did that every week for PC hardware, I would start talking about the same shit every week. And I don't want to do that. I'd rather just make a different channel about other stuff, right? And then also just make this a monthly podcast. And so that's what the plan would be. Like, I don't want to become Red Gaming Tech, where I'm literally just copy pasting every WCCF article and talking about nothing new in every video. I'll never do that. It's just that's not who I am. And so there would be that, but then I would also take this, which I'm planning on this potentially being the first podcast, and cutting it down, editing it down to remove all of the gaps in me talking and remove the pauses, and then making this like a 40-minute podcast instead of a 1.5 hour video. Kind of like how Joe Rogan does it. Like if you listen to his podcast, it's like 2/3 as long as the YouTube video that's uncut. That's kind of what I'm thinking of doing. That once a month, and then taking 2 out of the videos I do of the month, ones that you don't need to see what I'm talking about, and editing that down into a shorter 20-minute podcast with like 2 Q&As at the end from my Patreon members. Which, if you see reader mail, by the way, in my Discord, reader mail is for that. Only the top tier Patreons can use it. It has a 6-hour delay between messaging. Anyone who put thought into it, because you can only do it like once a day, and I will just go in order every podcast and do a few of those and work through them over a month. That's what that new Discord channel is for. And so the idea would be this. First week of the month would be the loose ends edited down to be quicker. Second week of the month would be a audio version of one of my videos with me adding some commentary, like behind the scenes stuff where I thought of the video. Third week of the month would be my Sacred Symbols like podcast, and I have 2 people in mind to be my co-host that I've already talked to. You don't know them. And then the fourth week would be another video edited down with behind the scenes info and Q&A. Like that Intel video you just mentioned, Titus? Did you just get here from Xanarkand? That Intel video would be a prime video to edit down into a podcast, where I start by saying why I wanted to do it, and then I talk about my thoughts on it, and then I add like 2 Q&As from the reader mail at the end. That would be a podcast. It'd be a 30-minute one. And then the next week would be a Sacred Symbols like 2-hour long one. And I would just do those 4 a month. And there'd be a bonus one in there here and there, because obviously there's more than 4 weeks per month technically. So every now and then I'll have to work something in. That's what So that's what I'm thinking. It sounds like you want me to do it. So I will, and this will probably be the first one, but I'll add some to this and edit it down so there's less of me ranting. Like I'll probably cut out most of this, for instance. Thank you. I like my voice too. I just listen to myself on loop while I eat dinner. I'm kidding. Let's see. I don't listen to myself, guys, please. All right. Let's see. So that's what's coming. And I'm almost to 64. Yeah. So this is the important part. I'm almost to 64 Patreons. That's when I launched the podcast. I want to get to 64. Subscribe to my Patreon. That's where you get it. And I've updated all the tiers so you can see what you're getting now. But subscribe to my Patreon. Once we get to 64, and I'm just telling you guys, don't think I'm hiding anything. Once I get to 64 or 384, I'm not sure which tier I'm going to do this. I'll only show the amount of Patreons I have, not the monthly amount I make. And it will be about getting enough Patreons to make the podcast and the amount of videos bigger. Because with podcasts, I also have to know if I'm making one, a bunch of people will download them, right? So that's how that's going to work too. So if you want the podcast, subscribe to my Patreon, because I'm waiting to get to 64 to do it. Okay, let's see. And I will pay very close attention to what you guys want. I have plans to maybe have a website that starts small and only gets as big as it needs to. I have a lot of plans. So the more supporters I get, the more I'll do. And also the feedback I get, I will take. Okay. All right. Let us get to question and answering. So I am setting a timer here, and it's different at the end depending on how long this takes. I actually moved much faster than last time, so that's good. We have plenty of time for Q&A. So I might stop early, but I set a timer. If you're a Patreon member, you get to ask me questions at the beginning. Now's when you can ask them. I will notice tips. There's a lot of you watching, but the first one was a tip, and he sent it early, but I'll answer it. It was 25% IPC increase for Navi. Yes. I have an equation I use to calculate the performance I did in my Navi lineup video. Yeah. I think that's what we're looking at. I think at least 15% IPC. Yeah. Okay. Here's what I think about Navi. I think at least 15% IPC. Very easily 25. Having said that, if it's less than 10%, if it's less than 15% IPC, I have to do a deep dive on what they fucked up, because something's wrong with this. It should be way stronger based on the dies I've been looking at. It should be at least 25%, I think. But I'm going to say at least 15 to be conservative. If it's less than 15, I will be pissed. And if it's more than 25, I'm going to be pretty happy. Having said that, I don't think the clock speed is going to be as high as Vega potentially, because you guys got to remember Vega was actually clocked pretty fast for Global Foundry's horrible 14 nanometer. And the Radeon 7 gets to 2 gigahertz. It actually gets to about the same clocks as Turing, if not faster. I've seen them get to 2150 megahertz. So, but that's because Vega is die shrunk and they knew what they were doing, and it's just there's not as many ROPs. So I could see Navi kind of maxing out at 1800 megahertz instead of 2 gigahertz, but at the same clock, same cores, yeah, 25% IPC, very realistic, I think. And I think it will be more efficient at gaming for sure. Okay, so that's the first question there. Wait, what was this other thing I wanted to say? Yeah, okay. Nope, I've said that. Okay, let's see what else there is. I already answered IPC and Ice Lake, Pedro. I think 18% is plausible, but I think they're probably lying because there's a note that mentions it has no security passes and patches in the benchmark, so it might be 10% lower than that. But again, it's not out of the realm of plausibility that Ice Lake has a 10% though, or even a 10% one. I mean, guys, Skylake had about a 8%, 10% IPC increase. Haswell had 10%. Ivy Bridge had 7%. It's about time they get at least a 10% IPC increase. What do you think if Intel made the LGA 2011 socket mainstream? I just think they need to put thought into a new socket and stick with it for a while. I think they need to abandon pretty much everything they have and do a reboot, even if it's with their existing architecture. They need to fix the security patches. They need to stop hiding them. They need to make a unfucked lake. And even if it's the same IPC, no security vulnerabilities, a socket that will exist for 4 years, and they stick with it. That's what they need to do. I don't want to see 2011. It's outdated. We're almost to DDR5 next year. AMD has PCI 4.0 on existing products right now. Vega 20 professional cards are PCI 4.0. Zen 2 will have PCI 4.0. No, their existing products need to go. They're already outdated. I don't want them to, I think, honestly, I don't know what I think about it, their HEDT lineup. I think AMD's 12 core is about to murk their 28 core. That's what I think. So, and they're more expensive to produce. So I almost say just abandon. I think abandon it. I think abandon the HEDT lineup. Put thought into an actually good socket that can give you 16 cores and stick with that for a while. That's what Intel should do, if you ask me. How important is it to get X570 and get PCIe 4.0? So if you're going budget, like I said, right, X79 is fine motherboard series still, if it still works. Those weren't very reliable motherboards, though, so you're kind of lucky it still works. Sorry. Back to Turbo. Turbo C- asks, how important is PCI 4.0? Do I need to buy X570? Are you going budget? If so, no, I don't really think you do. Having said that, like I got into PC gaming right around when Ivy Bridge had just come out, and I couldn't get why people weren't using that. It's double the bandwidth. That's future proofing. That's real future proofing. And we've been on PCI 3.0, in my opinion, a little too long. I mean, when 3.0 came out, they already saw like 5% performance increases from it. I wouldn't be surprised if there is a 5-10% performance increase. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if, because AMD's Navi is PCI 4.0, if you use it in an X570, it actually performs 5-10% better. So yeah, that's what I would say. If you're going high end with Zen, definitely get X570. You're already spending that much money. Even if you're just getting the 3600X, you want the X570 so you can definitely support Zen 3, so you can use the newest graphics card for the next 5 years, because the 3600X and up, man, those are going to be great gaming CPUs for 5 years. Do you really want to be held back by PCI 3.0? I wouldn't. That's my advice. Yeah, and AM5, no, definitely they're going to add. Well, I know Zen 3 is DDR5 and DDR4, just like Skylake is actually DDR3 and DDR4. Actually, my new Kaby Lake G or not G, my KB like laptop I got a year ago still uses DDR3 because technically, if they wanted to, they could be using DDR3 on their latest processors. So I think DDR5 next year, but it won't be mainstream yet. I think PCI 5.0. Yeah, it sounds like PCI 5.0 is 2021. I don't know if it'll be here next year, but it could be, honestly. Thanks for the Navi answer, and thank you for the tip. Do you think AMD is going to be able to push NVIDIA in the future like they are doing now with Intel? Absolutely, I do. Yes. If so, in how many years could we see that? Well, what I'll say is the longest I think it will take. I think Navi is here. It's going to go in the consoles, and they're not going to abandon it yet. I mean, in fact, they've optimized GCN so well that it would be. Well, the consoles are using it. I don't think they would want to move off of it right away. I think Navi, Navi 10 and 12 is this year. Navi 20 is next year. And I think they'll do like one die shrink generation with faster RAM 2021, probably on 6 nanometer EUV, if I had to guess. So I think 2022 is when we'll probably see the follow-up to GCN, at least by 2023. Right? But it could be 2023. And I do think they will go for a kill on NVIDIA. Trust me. They want to. You can see it in their eyes. They're ready to go for this now. They've got a new energy about them. They don't want any of this anymore. And yes, RDNA is GCN. Please stop with that, people. Does anyone remember when Vega was coming out? They acted like that was a new architecture as well. And it is. It was a huge change. They added high bandwidth cache, 15% higher IPC, all these different compute features. It was a huge retooling of GCN. And they didn't lie. Vega was the biggest change since the previous generations of GCN. And Navi might be a bigger change than Vega, although honestly, I don't really believe them. Vega was actually a big change for the professional market. I think Navi is going to be about as big as Vega, though, and changes, and it's still GCN. Guys, it's still 4096 cores, still 4096 cores. They changed the ROP ratio with Polaris, with the 290X, with Fury. They've been changing ROP ratios all over the place for a while. It doesn't mean it's not GCN. Any chance Intel GPUs will be good? I'd be surprised if they were horrible, but I'd be a little surprised if they were incredible. I think what Intel GPUs are going to be is now they don't need to buy AMD GPUs for their APUs anymore. They have been stagnating on their integrated graphics for a while. So that's what the main focus is going to be. I don't expect it to scale up that high, though. I'd be surprised if Intel actually challenged like Navi 20 and the 2080 Ti. But they could. Intel has a lot of money. Raja is not dumb. They could. They could challenge it. But I think most likely the sweet spot for Intel's graphics cards is going to be hyper-efficient mid-range graphics cards, which is still pretty cool, right? What that means is they could, it's funny too, right? AMD might have better price performance high-end cards, but then NVIDIA can't get away with claiming they're efficient in the low end anymore. That's where I see Intel cleaning up is the $100 to $250 market with GPUs that aren't as strong, but are super efficient compared to NVIDIA. That's kind of what I see. Yeah, I don't care what AMD said. I think it is GCN. That's what they said about Vega. They said that. Look it up. They literally said about Vega, it's basically not GCN. And now everyone says it's GCN. And get ready. If they did a follow-up on GCN again, God forbid, they would say, well, RDNA was basically still GCN. That's what AMD says every time. Yeah. And she literally said, we love GCN. It's still GCN. It has to be backwards compatible with the PS4. Sorry, it's also true. All right, let's see. There's a lot of questions popping up here. It's pronounced NVIDIA. I know, but I still say NVIDIA. So you have a weird accent, guys. You get over it. All right, let's see if there are any other good questions here. There's a lull. Now's the time to ask a good one. Yeah, 2080 Ti is crazy overpriced. Man, I could go on forever about how overpriced RTX cards are, honestly. Yeah, you can ask non-topic questions, especially if there's a small tip. But I'm just going to answer questions I see that I think people want me to answer. You're free to ask whatever you want. NVIDIA. Is that something people say? Do I see NVIDIA getting into times 86 somehow? Oh, I know. Now someone's gonna say it's x86. um, uh, I don't know. No, I don't. They don't have the license. VIA has the license, AMD has the license, and Intel has the license. And ARM is big enough that they're basically finding loopholes to make it emulate it almost as well. But I don't think they are, no. And I think that's really holding them back. I actually can't believe how weak their I can't believe how weak their what were they in their Shield gaming things. I can't believe how weak those were too. I was like not impressed. It would be cool if they made high-end CPUs for phones, but I really don't even see them as high-end. They're just less efficient than Qualcomm and a little stronger. They're really not. They're great guys. He's going to suffer as well as. Isn't NVIDIA going to suffer as well as Intel? It's too early to tell, though. I think AMD is going to come for them, but I think NVIDIA doesn't have a tendency to stagnate. They will milk you. They will do dirty tricks, just like Intel will, but they're not as dumb and complacent for some reason. Oh, you're right. Red Gaming Tech does say that. Yeah, I don't like him, so no surprise. Let's see. Of course, why am I judging? I say it wrong, right? Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't bet on NVIDIA screwing anything up yet, but they have before. But I don't see them getting as complacent as Intel. I really don't. What was the biggest challenge? He tipped me, so I'm going to answer it. What was the biggest challenge in your life, and how did you overcome it? I mean, this isn't Marin, so I'm not going to get into my personal life much here, to be honest. I mean, I went to college for mechanical engineering. I'm a kind of a perfectionist. So some of those classes were crazy hard. Luckily, I had a girlfriend who was like crazy nice, who kind of helped me get through the pressure. A lot of engineering students go through horrible breakdowns and stuff. A lot of people in the STEM field do. I didn't have a breakdown. I had a near one, though. That was pretty hard. I don't know if that was the hardest thing in my life, though. I mean, I don't know. Stuff with my dad was the hardest. If I go on Marin, you'll hear more about that, but not here. What do I think about 3D stacking? I think it's the future, and I think AMD is going to do it before Intel. So they're already at 2.5D stacking. Everyone bringing up Foveros is like, yeah, that looks cool, but also Foveros is not here. AMD is already 2.5D stacking, and we think Zen 3 will add some level of 3D stacking. Guys, I think 3D stacking is for sure the future, especially in low power laptops, and I think AMD is going to do it before Intel. I don't think that's Intel's silver bullet. I think Intel's silver bullet's going to have to be some kind of advanced scheduling architecture or stacked I don't want to give away one of my videos. APUs plus HBM. Oh yeah, those will be here probably early 2020. I think. What do you think is the best way of comparing different GPUs? Bandwidth has a huge impact on gaming performance. It's half of it. It's what feeds the cores. This is the amount of times I hear tech channels say that too, so I don't blame you. It just gets me so pissed. Bandwidth matters. When I had a 7970, that was a 384-bit card, and I got as much performance percentage-wise from overclocking the RAM as I did the core. No, it does matter. It's just Radeon 7 has enough more bandwidth than it needs. The Fury had a little more than it needed. But even the Fury, I think, was actually the perfect balance of compute and bandwidth, pretty much, right? I think Vega was a little bandwidth starved. And the fact is, adding more bandwidth usually requires very little energy and gets you almost the same amount of performance percentage-wise as the core. Depends on the card, of course. But I had a laptop with a 650 Ti. And for those who remember Kepler architecture in that lineup, the 650 Ti, a 128-bit card, was literally the 650, except with double the CUDA cores. So they went from 384 CUDA cores to 700, and 68. And then they just kept the same memory controller. Think of how ridiculous that is. And so I actually got more than a 1% performance increase per percent I overclocked the memory on that card. Same with the 660 Ti, because it was a 670 that was 192-bit. If you used fast RAM, it was as strong as a 670, but you really needed crazy fast RAM to overcome that. Now, let's see what else is. Can you do some more testing of your Radeon 7? Gamer Nexus did a good thing on scaling resolutions. You know what? I will give you this, though, that he didn't go over. It's an interesting thing I noticed in multiple games. Every Vega card I've tested has a certain amount of free performance for a resolution, but it's not usually a full resolution upgrade. What I mean by that is most resolutions people game at, like what are your standards? 720p, 900p, 1080p, 1440p, and then 4K. And between each of those resolutions, right? I don't know what exactly it is, but I think like 900p is like 50% to 200 to 100% better than 720. And then 1080p is like 50 to 100% better than that. And it's like each one, well, it's not like 50% better than that. It couldn't be because it's not 4 times 720p. Sorry for the screwing up that math. But right, like it's like a 75% increase in resolution to 100% increase per one of those resolutions. So it's not like the Radeon 7 can just run 1440p for free compared to 1080p. But if I play Battlefield and I use resolution scaling, I can go to 110% resolution scaling with no performance drop. But there's no resolution that's just 10% bigger, right, than 1080p. But it's like no performance drop, guys. It's hilarious. So there's clearly just some amount of that bandwidth that's literally just waiting to be used. And I found with Vega 64, it was like 6% or something. If you overclock the RAM a lot, at least. If you overclock the RAM a lot, which if you'll remember, Vega 64 was originally supposed to have about 10% faster RAM. That hurt its performance against the 1080 Ti. If Vega 64 had overclocked RAM, you could literally add like 8% resolution scaling for free. And it seems like Vega or Radeon 7s is about 15 to 20-ish, where you get a minimal performance drop. So yeah, I can tell you that in terms of resolution scaling, it does do it better than any card I've seen in my life. Going from 1080p to 1440p, there's only like a 30% drop when usually it's like 50%. Well, usually it's like 40%. And then going to 4K, it's like a 50% instead of like 60 or so. You know, it's better. It's a lot better than most cards, but it's not like it doesn't seem like it can crush 8K yet. I don't know if that's because games are just not programmed correctly or if it's just a limitation of it. I mean, it should have more ROPs, really, honestly. They just over doubled the bandwidth and then increased compute by 20%. And then that's all they did. So it's no surprise Radeon 7 is only about 25-30% stronger than Vega 64, even with monumentally more bandwidth. However, that bandwidth helps with rendering and mining and other types of compute tasks, some compute tasks in a way that's incredible. ARM to take over times 86. I think people should underestimate them. And this is also why I see, let me say this too. I'm glad you brought up ARM, that I think Intel's could be fucked. So if AMD, I see AMD is taking server. There's no way they're not. What does Intel even have? A 350 watt glued together 56 core against AMD's what? 64 core that uses 250 watts? Oh my God, this is a bloodbath. This isn't even close. And so AMD is going to take a lot of server market share. And I think they're going to take I think they could take over 50% of the gaming PC desktop market. In terms of OEMs, I don't know. That's going to be harder. Intel will give their chips away, but eventually they might start still selling a lot of AMD chips, even when Intel's giving them away for free once Zen 3 gets here. Yeah, I was getting 100 mega hash. But so the thing is, then you go, well, okay, Intel might be able to use Ice Lake for their low power, cheaper Ultrabooks, right? Yes, for now, but what happens if ARM enters the low power CPU market, which is where they would enter on laptops? So you could see a situation where AMD's taken the server market, they've taken the desktop market, And then ARM starts taking the low power laptop market, but AMD takes the high power laptop market. And Intel's just stuck in the middle, basically forced into a pricing war where they're selling things barely above cost. That's what worries me about Intel. And what worries me isn't that they won't have a response. It's just I don't really see a response for the next 3 years. I don't think Intel's having a true response that surprises us for a few years. So I don't know. That's why I say I'm worried about Intel. And then we have VIA taking server market share in China. China said they just won't use Intel because they don't want to risk security vulnerabilities, which I can assure you, China's in constant cyber wars with America and Russia. So God, everyone knows they need security. And I know Russia actually said they were only going to use AMD CPUs. Oh, it was with even Bolt Pile Driver. I remember that. Russia said their top CPUs will use Pile Driver systems. So Russia knew about the vulnerabilities probably before anyone else. They probably figured it out early. Didn't tell anyone. Damn Russians. But yeah. So, and I actually did too. I have a system I use that I put some cryptocurrency wallets on. It has not Pile Driver. I think it's Excavator, right? Yeah. It has an Excavator CPU. I got a good deal on it on the system, but yeah, guys, like this was 2 years ago. I'm like, I'm not getting Intel. I'm putting Excavator because I know it doesn't have the same flaws. There's no way I'm using Intel. Russians are awesome. Okay. I know there's people from Russia who view me. I don't hate Russians. Do you think that industry switch to ARM could end Windows? I think Windows is actually just going to support ARM. That's what's going to happen. No, it's Intel who's in trouble, right? That's who's in trouble here. Windows wants to support ARM. They just, right? I really think Intel's the one in trouble. Yeah, I know that's the thing. Intel is being, AMD has a lot of debt, and so does Amazon. Now they're the richest company on earth. I'm so tired of that, right? I'm so tired of these arguments. Well, AMD has debt. Yeah, spend money to make money, people. What AMD has is this year something twice as good as Intel at least, and they're going to double performance with Zen 3. Debt isn't going to stop them from making a truck ton of money, in my opinion. And yes, I have AMD stock. I've told people that months ago. But I don't have AMD stock because I talk about it. I have AMD stock because I knew what I'm talking about. And then I tell you guys what I'm thinking. So there's no secrecy here that I have AMD stock, and I'll sell it if I want to. And I'll keep talking about AMD. And I actually want to buy Intel stock in a few years when they're $2 like AMD was. They're not going to be $2. It could be 10 though. And I'm not buying NVIDIA for a while. I think NVIDIA is actually more overvalued than Intel, but I could do a whole video on that. And in fact, I basically did with my Huang's master plan video. All right, I'll pause it for a little bit. I got about 10 more minutes. So if you have a question, add a tip so I notice it, but it's like 10 minutes here before I'm tired. And I want to keep these to under an hour and 30. Let AMD get R&D for a year or 5. They will deliver. Yeah. I mean, I agree. And we'll see. I don't think AMD is going to stagnate. I just don't think they will. And AMD has a history of not stagnating ever. The most they ever stagnated was like during Phenom 1. And that was just like, what, a few years? Like, and then they had Phenom 2. You could argue it's because Intel was pushing them, but they've learned their lesson and they were punished hard for it, especially after making the mistake of Bulldozer. AMD, even when they fuck up, they don't really stagnate usually. Intel has gone into stagnation mode multiple decades before. Like what they did it before the 2000s, they did it in the 2000s, they've done it horribly recently. Like, man, it was like I almost wonder if we'd get Sandy Bridge. Phenom 2, I think actually scared them because it was good. And then Sandy Bridge just ended the conversation. R9 3 at 9. Yeah, I think that look, so the 3900X is expensive, but there's people who are willing to buy the 9900K. So here's what I think about that. The 3900X is going to be the ultimate gaming CPU. And here's also why it definitely will. I know you don't need 12 cores now, but the consoles are going to have 16 threads. So having more than 8 threads is actually useful, even though the consoles are 8 cores, because while they'll be running some of their games, some of their instructions with hyperthreading, you won't have to make do with hyperthreading. You'll just be using full cores on what the consoles are using threads. What does that mean? If you have, for instance, 16 full cores versus the console's 8 full cores, you'll probably run it like 200 hertz versus the console running 60 or 120 versus 240 or something. So yeah, I think it will matter. I think these consoles are going to move up the thread count to about 12 at least. And the best part is if you have a 12 core processor, you can turn off the hyper threading and just up the clock speeds, and it will game better than a 6 core 12 thread. So yes, the 3900X will be the best gaming processor, probably. Having said that, temporarily, if the 3800X can clock higher, that will be the best for the first year. And it's not the best price performance. Like, that's a Halo product, guys. Why don't I like Red Gaming Tech? Well, here's my problem with Red Gaming Tech here, and I don't want to start a shit war, guys, but he just copies things from WCCF. It's like clockwork. It's like literally you wait 5 minutes and he does a low quality video talking about it, acting like he has sources. He doesn't have any sources. He's just copying WCCF. And his analysis has been wrong almost every time. He was wrong about everything. And it was especially the PS5 and Xbox leaks where he acts now like he was right the whole time, where he literally said they were wrong. And now he's acting like he knew they were right. The guy's a hack. That's why I don't like Red Gaming Tech. All right. I'm sorry. I'm going to say it. And I've given UFD Tech shit, but I don't hate him. I'd love to do a podcast or talk with UFD Tech. I like the guy. But Red Gaming Tech honestly strikes me as a hack there. And you got me going. So I'll actually say it too. He stole some of my Zen 3 stuff. I'm calling him out. I saw it. After I had my Zen 3 video come out, there were a few channels like Mads Gaming, which I don't know, not Mad, wasn't Mads Gaming, who referenced me. Okay, if it was him. And I was like, whoa, wow, another channel's referencing me. That's really cool. And he mentioned my video and put a link. And he said, what you would expect from someone who isn't an analyst. He goes, well, I don't know if this is true, but it seems somewhat plausible. And I think this is cool. And one day later, my name is Paul. He did a video where he literally used all my links in my Zen 3 video. All the same links, except he didn't have my sources, by the way. But he said he did. And you could tell he was nervous while he was talking. Go watch his first Zen 3 video from like right a day after my Zen 3 video. He put my links and he acted nervous while he was saying it. Like he knew he was being dishonest. And that really pissed me off. And so I always thought he was a hack, but now I know he's a hack. So I'm calling Red. If you want wrong information that's copied from WCCF, me and Adored, go to Red Gaming Tech. But if you actually want good analysis, unsubscribe from that hack because I'm serious. I've seen him do it to Adored. He does it to WCCF. He doesn't cite them. He cites the sources they cited, and he's a hack. What do I think of Adored? He's the one who made me want to do this. I've talked to him for over a year. So Adored's more conservative than I am. What I show, I'm 90% confident. Adored only shows things when he's 110%. And you can see tech channels now citing Adored. And I think it's fair to. I don't think he shares information unless he really knows. And if he doesn't really know, he tells you. And this is just my speculation. So, yeah. I think Adored is pretty damn good. I do. All right, let's see what we got here. Oh, yeah, he does it to Jim all the time. All the time. He just steals Adored's stuff. I reference Adored constantly if I use it. Oh, I know. All the people. I'm starting the final timer here. Hair over 5 minutes left. Yeah, I right when I saw the Ryzen thing, I was like, it's so funny how when I saw the actual press conference, Ryzen, I was like, wow, Jim was right. And then I also thought I was actually talking to my brother on the phone, who might be the one who does the podcast with me, by the way. And I remember going, Jim was right. Oh no, everyone's gonna say Jim was wrong. I'm drinking Flat Tire, which is similar to Blue Moon. And I know Jim sided me. It's like, why wouldn't you, right? And I think what makes these videos great isn't your sources, it's your analysis. It's being able to call things correctly. And most of the Zen 3 thing I did was analysis. And I had been thinking those things for about 2 weeks. And then I got like one source that made me go, oh, I know this is true. I know Zen 3 is true. And that's why I got Zen 3 info out before Adored, actually, because I was willing to go forward with 90% confidence. Whereas Jim, it's 110%. If Jim has something, yeah. Buildzoid said, so yeah, about Vega 64 and its compute units. For gaming, pretty much, yeah. Gamer Nexus did a good analysis where he showed that same exact clocks, same exact bandwidth. Um, Vega 64 is like 2% stronger than Vega 56. Now they're binned better, so they usually clock higher and have faster RAM as of course they have faster RAM as well. So Vega 64 is better than 56 by about 10 to 15%. But if you clock them the same, it's like 2%. You really didn't need those stream processors. I would argue AMD probably should have never made Vega 64. They probably should have just made it Vega 60 and maybe did a limited run of Vega 64 liquids, and that's it. Because and Gamers Nexus found even if you overclock the chips and overclock their memory a lot, Vega 64's lead only led to like 5% from the cores, which it should be more if you overclock the memory, because Vega's memory overclocks incredibly well. So you're talking about adding 20% more memory. And then it was seriously just like a 5% lead over Vega 56, even with 15% more cores. So yeah, I mean, when I saw Vega 60, or when I saw Radeon 7 is only 60 compute units, I was like, does it have 64 ROPs? Because that's what matters. And it does. So that's why it beats it still. Let's see. What do you think about Raja departure from AMD to Intel? He'll be back, and then he'll go to ARM, and then he'll go to Tesla. Jim Keller's hopped between these companies like 3 times. All these there I heard this once in like a podcast. There's like these 100 supercomputer engineers. Or I don't even think it's like 100. Like there's like 1,000 excellent ones, and then there's like 20 god engineers. And Jim Keller's one, Raja's regarded as about at that level. I think Jim Keller's obviously regarded as the highest because he invented everything that's amazing, but like Raja's at the same level as Jim Keller, actually, guys. And so if there's only 20 of these people who can design architectures this well, they're going to hop between, they're going to go the highest bidder. I would too. And frankly, people who are this smart tend to be creative and get bored easily. And Jim Keller's talked about this. He can't be at AMD forever. He wanted to make Navi and work on some compute stuff. And then he said, I'm leaving, you know? And so same with Jim Keller. Jim Keller he actually stayed at AMD longer than usual. He was only at like Tesla for like a year or two to design their ASIC architecture. But when he was at AMD, it was like 5 years. And they almost kept him for another 5 by convincing him they were going to work on ARM servers. But eventually they ditched it. They said, we're not doing ARM servers. And then he left. So, he gets bored. If there's a Vega 56 for 211 new, it's not a bad deal. Although I wouldn't be surprised if a $250 Navi beats or matches Vega 56 while using half the energy. Again, I don't think Vega's overpriced. I think the idea that people are like, no one should be complaining that Navi is going to probably be priced only slightly better than the existing Vega cards. And it's because the existing Vega cards are selling for half their original MSRP, guys. What do you want? And now it's going to use less energy and have more features. Come on. Oh, yeah. I heard Gigabyte cards had some issues. How fast is Navi really going to be? I don't know. It'll be faster than Radeon 7 with the top model, but I'd say at least 10% stronger. But I could see it being 30%, which means it would be pretty close to a 2080 Ti. But that's my optimistic outcome. If it beats the 2080 Ti, I will be blown away. And I would argue AMD was sandbagging us the whole time. But I don't think it's going to. I think 10-20% better than Radeon 7. Yeah, my favorite GPU of all time, 7970. Yeah, it overclocked by 40%. It was the strongest gaming card. So think of that. Think if the 2080 Ti could overclock, or think if the Titan RTX could overclock by 30% or 40%. That's the frame rates I was getting in 2012. Just hasn't been the same since. There's been no GPU to blow away performance by such an incredible amount since then. Unfortunately, let's see, what else do we got going on here? I mean, yeah, I beat it was about as strong as a 290. That's how strong my 7970 was. Is my dog always or almost always at the window? She goes to that window, goes upstairs, goes in the guest room. And then in my bedroom, yeah, she's always looking out the windows. She has to. She's trying to keep me safe, guys. Listen to I'm trying to figure out what this guy's saying. Yes, man's getting mad at me for something. I'm full of it. Why am I full of it, though? He says, I'll listen to AMD engineers over you. First of all, I might be talking to AMD engineers from time to time. Second of all, I don't think I'm contradicting AMD at all, am I? What have I said that contradicts AMD's engineers? I don't know. There's always people who get mad. Hey, yeah, look, hey, you should if you have a lunch with an AMD engineer, I agree. You should listen to them over me. I agree. Just keep in mind that an AMD engineer is working on one thing. He doesn't know what's going on with the macro level company. And I mean, think about it, right? Let me give you an example. The Xbox One X is about as strong as a 1070, and I'm not going to get into arguments about that. It is. And yet AMD never brought that to desktop. Never brought it. And it's just kind of like, you know, some like so, but and then Sony's PS4 Pro is like a Vega Polaris hybrid architecture that uses I mean, at this point, like 100 on the newest 14 nanometer, or 16 nanometer, they're making the PS4 Pro on. It uses like the GPU like 100 watts, and it's about as strong as a 580. And yet AMD's not bringing any of that to desktop. It's like sometimes you wonder, right? Just because an AMD engineer is doing something doesn't mean he's right. I hate to say it. It's like, look at that. Microsoft knew better than AMD what GPU to use, right? If AMD knew the best GPU, they would just use an off-the-shelf one. But AMD wasn't selling 384-bit Polaris cards for some doofus reason. Although if you talk to AMD engineers, a lot of them say they were planning a 384-bit Polaris and decided to not release it. So do I use the 110% analogy? Okay. I get why that would annoy you. Why wasn't the missing 2800X in the anniversary edition? Because I don't care. Because there's no point. They were literally taking existing 2700Xs and putting a badge on them and calling it a 2700X anniversary. My Radeon 7 is just the slightly better yields sold from AMD, and they just put a different like die color in the same mold to make the fan. It's not like my special edition Radeon 7 is better than the other AMD Radeon 7s. That's why there was no 2800X. They're just trying to get rid of them, guys, because 2700X is going to be obsolete the second Zen 2 comes out. That's why they don't want them there anymore. 50-year edition. It's just marketing. They want to get rid of those cards. Discord's only for Patreon members. And that's really actually so I know it does look better though, right? The Discord is for Patreon members because eventually there's too many comments and I have to find a way to filter it. So that's what that's for. Okay. All right. Are there any last minute questions people really want to ask? I said I would stop about 10 minutes ago, but I'm still having some fun here. So it's like, you got one more minute for tips. Otherwise, I'm just going to pick 3 random ones I see here and stop. And then I'll finish this timer here. 1650 Ti is horrible price. Horrible. What money divides budget? I don't know. Budget graphics card. You could say if there was a $400 card that competed with the 2080, which we all kind of were hoping Navi would be right. I'd say that was a budget high-end card. But typically budget actually means under $200 in my opinion. But it's slowly meaning over $300 both because of inflation and just because the market's become more expensive. Comments on the trade war? Oh boy. I don't want to get political. That can be a different podcast I do, huh? What I'll say is no one should be betting on China doing well from this. But also, I think the US probably would have been better off if it was handled differently. There. I don't know if it's over Zen or Zen Plus. Could be either. I think it depends on how fast the RAM is. If you use really fast RAM, it's probably over. Yeah. Oh, that's a huge tip. Sam, do you have a question? Yeah, thanks, Artisan. I mean, when I think of like, I don't. When I think of the man in the White House, I'm so tired of hearing the name. Not even for political reasons, just because no one will stop talking about him. Um, like when I think about the things he does, I think he often knows where the not what the problem is, but where the problem is. He just has no comprehension over how to solve it. I guess that's what I'll say about him. There, that's the only political thing you're going to get out of me, and that's the most. If I ever did a political channel, I would not actually be Republican or Democrat. You could see me just trying to make you understand the other side because that's what I think we need right now. You need to understand each other. We have enough people screaming right now. And I'm tired of the screaming. I used to watch so much political stuff, but I'm tired by it now. Now I just watch HBO and movies on Netflix because I just can't stand politics anymore. I think the Zen 2 APUs will be incredible. Yeah, Yes Man's real trying to troll me here. It's kind of fun to watch. I've worked in all kinds of places, Yes Man. Never. Should I be doing a political channel? What do I think about Robert Mueller's testimony? I'll answer this one too. You guys are getting me to keep talking. So, Robert Mueller said something that people who don't be so careful to not throw insults out at either side here because I don't want my message to be bad. What Robert Mueller said in his testimony won't be listened to, I think, by a lot of people, especially if you're blind. I'll say it, and I don't mean it as an insult, but if you're someone who's just gung ho Trump, listening to everything he says, I think you might see the Mueller report. You know, most people aren't reading the Mueller report, and I think the reason the Democrats wanted Mueller to testify is so he would put it in a more human way, right? Like if Mueller explained the report himself in a testimony, it would be very humanizing. No one's going to read that report, but hearing him explain it, people tend to listen to podcasts, right? They don't read anymore. They like listening. That's why I think the Democrats really wanted him to testify. And I think he was very clear that he doesn't want to testify because the report should speak for itself, but he's kind of ignoring that that's not what the point is. He's a very straight-laced person who knows what he's doing. But he's a he is an FBI lawyer type, which means he's sometimes too smart for his own good, I think. But I think if you listen to his exact words, his testimony was very clear. He said there's a path for impeachment, and if they want to follow it, it's up to Congress. He said there is a path. It's up to you if you follow it. I think he was basically saying do it if you want to, because there's a reason to, but you're not going to get me to arrest the president because that's illegal. And frankly, he's right. Okay. From this amount, buy some stuff for your loved one. I hope you're a Patreon member. Pay attention to the things in the tiers. What is it? Because I will be segmenting those more as I get more Patreons. I'm just trying to get to 64 because that's the goal, and then I want to get to 384. Impeach the orange man. I don't know. Again, I don't want to be on either side of any aisle here. And that's not even saying I'm not necessarily more on one side. It's just saying I'm tired of sides. Prime's hires. I didn't know Prime prices went up. Yeah, 384 for 384 bit. Yeah, I'm not talking about Trump anymore. I don't want to talk about him in the first place. He already gets too much airtime. Uh, I'm not a centrist. I'm a Leninist libertarian, if that makes sense. Which I'll explain in a different YouTube channel. Brexit? I'll talk about Brexit for a second. None of this is going to be in the podcast. um, I think Brexit is a colossal fuck up like we've never seen. If you like the show Veep or you like The Death of Stalin, another good movie by that director, I think there will be one about Theresa May. I think, yeah, I don't know. I think hard Brexit, and I've been saying it to my friends for 2 years. I think hard Brexit. No, I think that's what's coming. They just can't agree. They can't agree on anything. It's clear they can't agree. Let's just get it over with, I think. Anarcho-capitalist. Yeah, you probably like Bitcoin. All right. What's interesting is how the viewers haven't gone down. I expected it to drop off. Yeah, Chernobyl's like the best show this year. If you like history and stuff, but it's also just good in general in terms of how it's directed. The pacing is incredible. You can't stop watching once you start an episode. It just pulls you in. I know. I'm not going to go into politics. Well, here's where I'll say this, guys. I'll let you know a little bit about myself since I'm still talking. So, for those curious, I I got good scores on pretty much everything on the ACT, but I actually got higher, and I got, like, I don't know, 28 in math. I don't know. I got good scores in science and math, but I actually got like a 34 or something in reading and writing. I'm actually good at communication and reading and writing, which is atypical for an engineer, even though I love engineering. Um, but and when I was in college, I majored in mechanical engineering. I actually minored in international studies. I took a lot of international debate and politics classes, so I could go on and on and on about like a trade dispute or that type of stuff. And that's why I might do a politics channel, because I actually probably know more about politics than hardware. But so yeah, you can always get me talking with politics. That's the problem with me. Yes, man. I need some technical answers, not some dumb guy trolling me. I'm pretty sure you're trying to troll me and you're just doing really a bad job. Next gen nuclear reactors. I don't know. I've always been a fan of nuclear, but it's like after seeing Last Man on Earth, anyone who's seen the whole season, they made a good point in one of the last seasons about nuclear, and just seeing Chernobyl, it's like, what if a country evacuated due to a civil war? Who's taking care of those reactors? No one? I don't know. There should be a shutdown mechanism, and they are, I'm sure now. I'm sure they're better, but I don't know. I think nuclear is good. We should be using it, but we should be crazy careful, right? I don't know if I want to talk about Game of Thrones, and you guys might hate me. I thought the Game of Thrones ending was good. So, and I think people hated the Sopranos. People hated the endings of a lot of TV shows. But I think in time, people will look back and go, it was fine. And it could have been a lot worse. I know a lot of people just wanted Jon Snow on the throne, or the Lannisters, or Daenerys, or Littlefinger would have been pretty funny, right? Or like all these different people. But honestly, predictable is what you wanted. I don't know. Their job isn't to make you happy. Their job, like, and it was written by George R. R. Martin, so you get mad at him. He wrote it, guys. He outlined the ending to them 3 years early. Get mad at George R. R. Martin. Yeah, Game of Thrones is good. I know a lot of people don't watch it because people talk about it too much, and I agree. People talk about it too much, especially dumb people who don't actually understand it. But it is good. I mean, you should watch it. John Wick 3 is incredible. Hound Mountain story arc was awesome as well. But then they kill. Then they also. I was thinking about him killing the Viper. Made me sad. Will chiplet design affect gaming latency? I think that's the question, but it seems like AMD solved it. And that's why I'm blown away if they solved it. It's like I like Zen 2 seems like a crazy home run. C9 TV for gaming. Yeah, I hooked it up to play Sekiro finally. And if it's not too big for you, right? I still game on this gaming monitor I have here that's smaller, but if you can fit that on your desk, like I want to wait for a 32-inch version. But it's incredible. It has no latency, it's instant response times. And by the way, Sekiro on PC supports HDR. It was awesome. I played it for a few hours on my TV. So if it's convenient for you to use that TV, it is technically the best gaming monitor by a lot, actually. What do I think of the prices of the X570 boards? Wait until July to actually know if that's how expensive they will be. But my understanding is, and look at them, right? Look at the fans on them. The X570 boards are effectively an almost Threadripper chipset, right? They're bringing you PCI 4.0 with more lanes than Intel. That's almost right. And that's double the bandwidth per lane. So if you were doing Crossfire times 8 PCI 4.0, that's the same as doing Crossfire with times 16 3.0. So it's almost the same amount of PCI bandwidth as Threadripper. That's why they're expensive. You're getting a Threadripper effectively, except now it's more efficient and smaller. And I can tell you those X570s a lot cheaper than Threadripper motherboards. That's why they're expensive. But you don't need them. You don't need them. If you're getting the 3600X, you could probably just get an X470 and it'd be fine if you want to go budget. You know, you don't, like I said, I would recommend it if you're going high end because why not? But I guess I would say the X3 36, yeah, the 3600X. You can just get the $100 motherboard. Go for it. And in fact, remember AMD said some of the X450 and 470 motherboards will be updated to PCI 4.0 in a BIOS update. So just look for one of those. It'll be cheaper, right? You don't need X570. X570 is because the 12 core and the fastest 8 core competes or beats Threadripper. That's why they're expensive because they're using that. They're that good. Why are there no affordable True HDR monitors? Because they're milking. There will be. LG is going to bring those to the monitor market. And in fact, I just saw an HP laptop that has OLED. Still haven't watched the review. A mobile gaming tech, I think it is. But yeah. All right. Timer's almost up. I'm giving it 30 seconds and then I pause, answer like 2 more, and I'm done. I know I've said this. Yeah, I knew this would go on 30 minutes longer than I expected. Whatever. So yeah, this will be edited down a ton for a podcast. I'm talking about LG's newest 2019 lineup of OLED TVs, which actually I'm kind of a sucker. They're already like $500 cheaper. All right, and that's the timer. I'll answer 2 more. Let's see. No, I don't think X570 will have any cooling problems. I think they'll be fine. I just think they did that to be safe. They don't want any problems. I think their motherboards, they're taking their time because they want this to be a home run launch. They know they're going to kill Intel. They could have launched Zen 2 in some form 2 months ago, but they're going to launch it in July with proper motherboards and ready. That's what they're going to do. And so they're being safe by putting fans on it. You know, I wouldn't worry about it. I wouldn't, you know, we'll see though. I think the shirt's actually pretty nice. Obviously, you don't buy an expensive graphics card for the shirt, but I actually do think the shirt is nicer than I thought it would be. Do I hate any tech companies? You're going to have to save that for next month. All right, I'm done, everyone. Thank you for the tips. Thank you for the questions. Support my Patreon, and you can ask these questions anyways for free every month right there, as much as you want, and I will pull from them in my weekly hopefully eventually weekly podcast. And I will start by making the podcast at least monthly and then go to bi-weekly if I notice it's popular. And then I'll try to make it weekly pretty quickly if a lot of people actually like the podcast. All right, support me. Please subscribe. Thank you. It's been a fun almost 2 goddamn hours.